Hey, Justin Dyson here at Dyson Apiaries. Today we're going to talk about yard feeding honeybees. In addition, we're going to show you how to build one of these really expensive 5-gallon bucket yard feeders. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down in the lower corner so you can get notified of future videos. So with yard feeding, there are some advantages and disadvantages to using this method. One of the advantages is if you watched one of my previous videos talking about different kinds of feeders, all of those types we have to go to the physical hive, every single hive. So if we have 30 hives in an apiary, I have to go to every hive and I have to put feed on. With something like this, we can put it in one location. So if I had 20 or 30 hives here, I could take and put 3-4 of these type feeders out, and I would be feeding every hive in the apiary. And it's entertaining to watch the bees working. In addition, another advantage is, so a lot of times when I use a method like this is in the late summer dearth, and what's nice about this is if we position it right, the bees feel like that there is a nectar source out there, and they go work it just like any other nectar source. If a tulip poplar was blooming, they're going to work that nectar source. So that prevents a little bit of robbing within the apiary. Now, with that said, I want to caution something that I see in a lot of beekeepers' apiaries. They'll put a feeder like this right in the middle of their apiary. The problem with that is when we think about honeybee biology, honeybees have two primary types of dances. They have the figure 8 and then they have the circle dance. With the circle dance, it depends on the variety of honeybee, but 80 to 100 meters or less is the circle dance. So the bee comes into the hive and says, "Hey, there is honey or nectar less than 80 to 100 meters away." They can't really tell how far away that is when they communicate that, and the direction is a little iffy. So what happens is those bees go out from their hive and they just go searching frantically within that small radius. What happens is if you have a weaker hive or something in that apiary, well, they're going to get taken advantage of, and those bees may find that source before they find this source, and when they do that, now you have a weak colony that gets robbed out. So I want to caution you about that. Make sure that you put these feeders at least 100 meters away from your apiary, preferably 150, 200 meters away. Now, disadvantages. So one of the disadvantages is, as you see with this situation, all these bees are piling on top of each other. So if you have any conditions in your apiary with disease or varroa or something like that, they're going to be transmitting that between them. In addition, maybe you have a neighbor that's not been so proactive about controlling varroa, or so they maybe have some parasitic mite syndrome, some viruses. When our bees are working here, their bees may also find this. If it's within a couple 3-mile radius, they may also find that, and our bees and their bees are piling on top of each other, and they're transmitting those diseases, viruses, parasites amongst each other. So we have to be aware of that they may happen. Know if you have a neighbor right down the road that has an apiary, we need to kind of consider that, as maybe yard feeding may not be the best option. Additionally, with that said, we have to think about, am I feeding my bees or am I feeding my neighbor's bees? So if I have one hive of honeybees and my neighbor has 5 hives of honeybees and he's 2 miles down the road, I'm probably going to be putting more money and more sugar into his honeybees than I am my own. So we need to consider neighboring honeybees, if our neighbors have have a big apiary or something like that, yard feeding may not be the best option. If we kind of know our surrounding area and there's really not any honeybees, or maybe we have somebody a couple of miles down the road that has 1 or 2 hives, we have 20. Yes, there may be some wild honeybees as well. We're primarily going to be feeding our bees, but we do need to be aware of that. We may be feeding more than just ours. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump over into the shop, and I'm going to show you how to make one of these really inexpensive feeders. There are a lot of different methods to yard feed. This is one with a cheap 5-gallon bucket and drill a few holes. I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, to make these bucket feeder yard feeders, we're just going to find a good 5-gallon bucket. You know, find a paint contractor or a food store or something that's getting rid of them. I probably wouldn't use like a hydraulic oil bucket or oil-based paint. You know, this is latex paint. Not really concerned about it. It's clean inside out. 2 main things we have to have. We have to have a lid with a gasket, so we need to clean that gasket up good if it was paint, for example. And it needs to be of this design where it has these little pockets in it. These pockets are where that syrup's going to sit. And keep in mind, when we start drilling the holes, pay attention to the spot where the handle goes in. We do not want to drill a hole in that pocket. If we drill a hole in that pocket, the bucket's going to empty. And we're going to have a mess. So kind of how this works is, as the bucket's sitting upside down with a lid on it, we're going to put these holes inside of these pockets, and that syrup is going to come down and up into that pocket, and the airlock is going to keep it from just running out and over. And as the bees take some, it can get a little bit of air and it'll refill the pocket. So that's kind of how it works. So I'll get into showing you kind of how to do this. So there's a couple different ways. You take like an 1/8 inch drill bit or something. You can kind of go in on an angle like this. Make sure that hole is, you know, in the lower half of that groove. I don't really prefer to do that. I like to drill straight from inside. And this bucket, for example, you can actually feel the little ribs, so you kind of know where to drill. But just to be safe, what we're going to do, I'm just going to take this square here, and I'm going to set that about halfway down that groove, and I'm going to go around the inside, and I'm going to mark that. All right, so we're just going to mark this all the way around real quick. And there we go. Now we have a mark. We know where the center line of those pockets are. You can, sometimes with some of these buckets, this particular bucket is not working like that, but sometimes you can hold them up to the light and you can actually see those pockets through there. But we're just going to go in here and we're going to find those 2 little ribs there, and we're going to drill. We're just going to drill a couple holes in there in each one of those pockets like that, little 1/8 inch holes. Now keep in mind, we need to make sure we don't drill through the outside. That could cause some problems. So we're just going to drill through, and now we have those holes. If we can see in there, those are the 2 holes, and that's where the syrup's going to come out into those pockets. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the rest of the holes. And again, remember, don't drill a hole in where the handle connects. So here we see we have holes drilled all the way around, and what we'll do is just fill this syrup up basically to that line there, and flip that bucket over. I'll show you that in a minute. I put a little bit of water in here. What I'm about to put in here is 2-to-1 sugar. I like to run them a little bit lighter than 2-to-1. Sometimes the bees will get kind of stuck in 2-to-1 mixture, so I run like a 1-to-1 or maybe a little bit heavier. So we have our feeder done. We have it filled up. Important to establish a place that's nice and level. If it's out of level, you can lose that airlock and it'll just run all the syrup out on the ground. So make sure this lid is snapped down good. You're gonna splash a little bit when you flip them over and set them up, but just gonna set that up like so. A little bit's gonna run out until it gets that airlock. You see how it kind of filled these up, and as the bees draw them down, they won't fill up quite that much. But it has to establish that vacuum first. So bees will be on that. Look at there. Here's the bee. There's the bees already found it. In about an hour, this will be covered up. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you got something informative out of this video on how you can use yard feeding maybe in your own operation, and how you can build an inexpensive yard feeder if you don't already have one. In addition, kind of the pros and cons to using that method as opposed to in-hive feeding. If you haven't already, go ahead and
punch that like button and sting that subscribe button. Bye!